Okay, I'm going to read this ad to you, and I want you to decide for yourself really what you think about this ad before you hear what I have to say about it, because you know that most of these are going to be pretty bad. But just, look at the price and then kind of break down the parts in your head as I read through them, and then decide for yourself if this is something you would entertain at all. Maybe you would counter the lower price, what have you. Just let me know in the comment section below before you hear what I have to say, because I'm curious to see if we think alike or not. So, $850 for this case. It's actually full on PC, I should say. And it starts off with gaming desktop computer, comma, with red, comma, LED lighting, and front temp sensor. Can play most games at high settings, has no issues, and keeps a good temperature even while running for long periods of time. Mid-tower computer has an openable door that gives access to 6 customizable Aditon slots, as well as a vent. Has a see-through side wall. So I have a few qualms with this. Off the bat, I want you guys, again, to comment down below what you think first off. Maybe you completely disagree with me on this, and that's perfectly fine. We can have disagreements. We can completely disagree about what we think used parts are worth. Look, the price of an object is in the eye of the purchaser. If you see the utility in spending $200 on an item I only see $100 utility in, then go ahead and pay $200 for it. That's totally fine. If it's worth it to you, buy it. I'm not gonna knock on you for that. But when people blatantly overprice products, or when people blatantly mislead you or attempt to do so, I'm going to probably make a video about it. And if I don't make a video about it, I will post it to social media, just not to bash the seller, because I'm gonna do my best here to keep the seller's info concealed, at least on YouTube. I usually just share the link on Twitter when I'm sharing it with people who follow me on Twitter. But this is more or less to give you guys the inside scoop as to how I deal with used parts when I buy and sell online. I do it all the time via Craigslist, Amazon, eBay. It's something that I enjoy doing. And I want to just kind of fill you guys in with how I kind of negotiate, rationalize parts, especially used parts, because it's kind of hard to put prices on used components. So right off the bat, $850, I'm just thinking in my head right here, he's asking way too much. And we're gonna go ahead and break down the prices of each component now and see how far off the mark we actually are. So we're gonna start first with the power supply here, 725 watt. This I don't believe has an 80+ rating. I've owned this exact power supply. I think it was from a brand that originally was called Senti. This is not a very reputable power supply. It actually runs quite loud. You will hear the power supply fan just, when you're playing games, what have you, which isn't a full load, by the way, right? So games are gonna utilize maybe half to 3/4 of your full CPU utilization, assuming you have a decent CPU, and then the graphics card will be ramped up pretty high. But total system power draw when you're playing games isn't going to be as high as it would under theoretical limits of CPU and GPU usage. So just, something that to take home here is that the power supply is not a good one. It will be loud and it's not very efficient. On top of that, he has 8 gigs of Crucial Ballistic Sport RAM. Look, I'm not going to knock him on the RAM. 8 gigs is really fine for a used system. I recommend eventually upgrade to 16, but 8's not really going to hit you that hard, especially when you're pairing 8 gigs of system RAM with a 4 gig GT730, which we're gonna get to next. So this VMAX GeForce GT730 4 gig card here, this is what he is claiming supposedly does high settings in most games. And I'm here to tell you folks that that's not true unless you're playing at like the 480p resolution, maybe 720p, but I would say most games overlaps with some titles that definitely wouldn't run at high settings as low as 720p. And I have firsthand experience, again, with the GT730. I'm not making this up, folks. I've benchmarked this exact card. I've actually kind of made fun of it and compared it to a really expensive card, I think, in one video. So yeah, this card is not something that you just throw into a system and you're like, oh, check out my sweet system. It's more of a budget option, and that's okay, right? We don't expect most people to be able to go out there and drop $500 on a graphics card, but it's not something to really brag about and say, yeah, like I said, check out my 730. So he's trying to upsell it, I think. He's trying to make it seem like it's a more powerful card than it is. And to the layman, someone who's never seen a PC like this, at least the inside of one, doesn't know the specs and what the specs are capable of outputting in terms of FPS, that person might be misled. So when he says here, I'm assuming it's a guy, that you can play games at high settings, quote unquote, I'm more or less just kind of, how dare you, like, why are you trying to persuade people that this system is more powerful than it actually is? Because anybody who knows anything about these graphics cards knows that the 730 isn't anywhere close to what you'll need to play in, let's say 1080p, which is the most common gaming resolution out there by far, according to Steam surveys. Nowhere close to that high settings in 1080p, unless you're playing like a super old game like The Sims, which okay, fine, maybe a 730 is good for that. Now, I'm not sure if this person just can't spell. There are plenty of typos in here, pretty obvious ones, but on top of that, it just almost seems so blatant that he's intentionally misspelled something, that he just doesn't care about what he's selling. And that's a red flag. For anybody looking to buy something from a seller, try to make sure they at least know what they're selling. Otherwise, you might be suckered into buying something that is probably not what it seems on paper, or at least in the pictures. So NZKT, that's not a company that exists that I know of. It's NZXT. This case is from a reputable company. Do them a solid and at least spell their name right. Let's see, he has a WD Blue 1TB hard drive. He misspelled hard drive, whatever. He has an MSI 970A motherboard, and he actually had the audacity to say aftermarket processor fan with AMD FX 6300. And of course, he's going to pitch the fact that it's a 6-core CPU, even though the way AMD did this, it's not really a 6-core CPU in terms of what utilizes what resources are available to each core there. We have a video on this, by the way, if you're more interested. But that aside, this aftermarket quote-unquote cooler that he's sporting here is as stock as anything. If it's aftermarket, then it's literally a replica of the stock fan that's included in the CPU case. So yeah, you're not gonna have a fun time overclocking the system at all, and not the CPU. And if you even care to overclock the GPU, I'm not sure how that would go either. But it looks like this is a pretty small form factor GT730, the aftermarket processing cooler, whatever he's calling it, aftermarket processor fan. That's what it is. So is it the fan aftermarket or is the whole cooler aftermarket? It just doesn't look good. It looks really fishy, and it looks just bare bones. So he's trying to upsell, right, an aftermarket cooler, but I don't think it's one. So, and then one internal back mounted fan. I don't know where it is in the pictures. Maybe it's further back, but nonetheless, doesn't change my mind. The system looks okay. I mean, it's not a pretty system by any means, but it's definitely overpriced. So here are the parts. 725 watt power supply, I would say between 30 and 40 bucks. 8 gigs of DDR3, we're just gonna say 60 bucks. This is all used, by the way. I'm just kind of throwing these parts out here. So we're at $100 total now for the RAM and the PSU. A GT730, let's just look that up right now. And it looks like these are going anywhere between $50 and $90. The 4 gig ones are a bit more expensive, as you've probably assumed. So let's just say use 60 bucks. So we're at $160 now. We have a case from NZXT. It's a rather old case. I actually looked at this for one of my first PC builds ever in the Guardian, and we're just gonna say 20 bucks. It's pretty cheap, pretty old. So we are at what now? $180. 1TB WD Blue hard drive. It's used, so taking that into account, let's say 30 bucks. Let's give them 25% off. So 30 bucks plus $180, 210 bucks. And then we have the FX 6300 with the motherboard. So this is where it's gonna be pretty subjective. I wouldn't pay any more than 20 bucks for an FX 6300. And yeah, that's probably pushing it in my book still, because Ryzen 3 is such a good value right now. And that motherboard, maybe 40 bucks. So 60 bucks for the CPU and motherboard, that comes out to, what are we at now? 180, 210, 270 or so USD. And let's throw 10 bucks in for an extra fan, just because I feel pretty sorry for the price at this point. Yeah, this system is pretty cheap, and he's trying to sell it like it's this really expensive system. So if you, again, know anything about used parts, do 10 seconds worth of research on a used site like eBay, where everyone's trying to sell everything, especially graphics cards right now. You'll know after just 10 seconds, like I said, that this system is severely overpriced. It's not even like remotely overpriced. Like, it's so high, this guy probably thinks to himself he can get somewhere close to $850 for it, right? So when you lowball him, which our version of a lowball is actually going to be justified, because you could build a system used for considerably cheaper than what he's asking for it, he's going to think that you're just being a jerk and asking way lower than you should. So people like this, with this kind of like complex where they think that they're right and they think that the price is justified, are never going to understand why you would offer 300 bucks for this, which that's pushing it. So again, I want to reiterate the fact that you might not agree with the way I've broken down the price here. You might not think that this guy is being misleading. You might just think he's a genuine guy trying to make a quick buck, and whatever. That's beside the point. What I want you to take away from this is that if you wanted to do this yourself, you could do it for a lot less. And you don't have to deal with somebody like this trying to mislead you and sucker you into thinking you have a really good system when you actually don't. And this is why knowledge is, I mean, they call it knowledge, right? I don't know, Ty Lopez, you guys, but the reason why knowing this stuff up front is important is because you know what you're actually buying. You know what your money is worth and what you can get for your money. And when you decide to spend $850 on a system like this, you're just throwing money away. Literally, you're giving it to somebody who's going to be irresponsible with it more than likely. So look, don't jump on Facebook or whatever and harass this guy if you do find him. I don't want that. That's not what these videos are meant to do. I don't want to incite violence or have you guys threaten this guy or just give him a hard time. That's not what this video is about. It's about you guys learning how to deal with just ads like this online. I mean, you just ignore them usually. But if you find that someone's asking more than you think it's worth, don't be afraid to throw a price out there that you'd be willing to pay for the product. If it's insulting to the guy, then don't worry about it. Move on. There's nothing wrong with asking lower than what somebody wants for a product on a site like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, as long as you're not absolutely lowballing the guy just to take advantage of them. So to keep things short and sweet, I want to hear from all of you in the comments section below. Again, if you disagree with me especially, let's duke it out down there. Give this video a thumbs up if you thought it was cool, a thumbs down for the opposite, or if you hate everything about life. That's right, folks, it is back. Be sure to click that red subscribe button if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more content like this. This is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.